Max, let's talk a little bit about equipment, about the equipment you use and how important you think that is. Tell us about the guns that you're shooting.
So typically, if I'm shooting in an open division, what I'm running is a Sig Sauer 2011. Essentially, it's an exact replica of an STI, an SV, SPS, things of that nature. And as far as getting the gear running for that, there's a lot that comes into it. Any open level gun, as you know, it's quite a pain to keep it running and keep it going. And as much as we shoot, it's just going to continue to beat the guns up. So for open division, I find it very important. As I was preparing for the world shoot, I had 3 guns, and I thought that was enough, and it wasn't. Because I had one gun go down, then the other go down, and next thing you know, you have 1 gun left. And you don't want to shoot with it, you don't want to train with it, because that's the 1 gun you have left. So now I have 5 open guns that I cycle through, and I still feel like that's not enough.
And you're able to keep 5 guns identical? You take one and the next, and you feel exactly the same with each, or do you end up having a favorite?
Yeah, you always have a favorite, I think. Right. And sometimes your favorite is not the one that you shoot in matches because it's not the one that you trust the most, but it is your favorite, and you have to learn how to just work around that mental part of it and just get the one that is going to perform the best, and you just learn how to perform with it rather than saying, oh, I like this one, but it jams sometimes. That's not good enough.
No. And do you do your own gunsmithing, or do you have the guns built and then serviced by someone?
Yeah, I'm just a trigger puller. I make sure I have a good gunsmith. I have a guy up in New York that I go see, Dan Bedell from Bedell Custom, and Sig Sauer and him work collaboratively together to make sure I have the best 1911s that I need. And he provides backup parts as well. But for the most part, I'll always carry a backup gun with me. If there's a big, some sort of a big error that happens with the pistol and I need to switch to the backup gun, I will. But as I mentioned, they're very similar anyway. They're almost identical for the most part. But if there's something small, maybe an extractor, a safety, something small that I can fix on the range, I do try to fix it to get my match gun back up and running. If it's something that doesn't really have a big something that's not going to be critical on the performance of the handgun, safety being one that's very easy. If so, something that's already fit, I can just drop it in and go.
So you carry a set of pre-fitted replacement parts, things that might break?
I do, yeah. So that's for my open gun stuff. Now for my production guns, my SIG P320s, I'm always going to carry backup guns for that and spare parts as well. And I'm really enjoying shooting that gun. Last year, started shooting it. This year, I'm looking forward to shooting the P320 again in the Carry Optics division, which is something new, where we'll be putting an optic on top of the actual slide there, slide-mounted optic, and running production division with an optic. So that could be fun, and that's going to be a whole other deal of setting up gear. I shoot single stack 1911s from SIG. The 1911 Max is the one I'm running in 45. So you can see real quickly, I'm shooting a lot of guns here, and there's a lot of gear to manage and take care of.
Yeah, that takes a lot of time as well. And it's not just the guns, it's the magazines.
Yeah, exactly. And people say, why don't you shoot 3-gun? Why don't you shoot this? Well, because I have my hands full with what I'm doing. It's very, very difficult. But I do have Dan Bedell that's helping me. I have the custom shop at Sig Sauer that's helping me. I have my father who internally at home, he's not a gunsmith per se, but he's the one that really takes care of me and can replace scopes and do some small maintenance to the guns and really take care of things. So that way when I get home, I can be with my kids and enjoy my time there, and my guns are still being maintained. So
run us through some of the other equipment other than the firearms that you're using on the range.
Yeah, as far as ammunition, I think it's very important to make sure you have a good projectile. I do my best to find whatever the best projectile is out there and make sure that it's running 2 inches at 25 yards is kind of my thing. And I know that could be demanding on some guns. Some folks think that's too much. Some maybe not think it's enough. But I feel that if I can't hold a group at 2 inches at 25 yards, and it could be on a bench, it could be on a rest, but if my gun's not capable of doing that, then we need to analyze either the barrel that we're using or the projectile that we're using. And then from there, I just want to make sure I have some sort of a clean powder so my gun's not going to get really dirty over time. Because again, I'll shoot 1,000, 1,500 rounds without cleaning the gun, sometimes more, because I want to spend my time shooting rather than cleaning.
So you'd say 1,000 rounds between cleaning as a minimum is what you want an open gun to run?
And I want it to run more. The worst answer my gunsmith can give me is, oh, the gun's dirty, go clean it. I don't want to hear it, right? I want that gun to run 3,000 rounds. And if I just keep squirting oil and keep shooting, it should go. And if it doesn't, we need to figure out why, so that way we can perform, get it to perform better, because all it takes is one malfunction in a match. There's no alibis, we're done.
And other than the guns and ammo?
Yep, so as far as my gear, obviously Double Alpha. You might know the guy.
I've heard of him.
Yeah.
They're in Holland, I think.
I think so. Yeah, some Israeli guy. But he doesn't like cheese, by the way. The Double Alpha gear is obviously amazing for me. I'm running the Race Master holster, the Racer pouches. Particularly, I prefer the Racer pouches. I find them to be extremely slick. very quick releasing, rather than the Race Master. A lot of folks out there like the look of the Race Master versus the plastic. I just prefer the plastic racer pouches for me, and it's extremely versatile. So if I'm running, my 1911 Max, I can have a 1911 insert. If I'm running my SIGs, I can have a SIG insert. If I'm running my STI mags, I can have my STI mags inserts. So that allows me the ability to be able to change on the fly if I need to. As you know, better than most, the Double Alpha products obviously is consistent for me to.
Yeah, well, we work hard to try and make them that way, so that they offer a solution to a wide range of pistols and gun types, and so.
Makes it so easy.
Yeah, and the Race Master with the interchangeable blocks as well is a friendly way to go in that regard. Yep. And for eyes and ears?
Eyes and ears, here in protection right now, I'm using Pro Ears. It's been a company I've been with since I was a kid. I'm one of those guys who try to be very loyal to the people that I work with and work for, and those who helped me in the past, I try to help them in the future. So Pro Ears has been with me for a long time. A great product. It's electronic hearing protection, but I do also double plug just to make sure I'm going to protect my hearing for the future. Yes, it's a great product, but I still want to make sure I'm protecting my hearing. And for eye protection, currently I'm using Pila Performance Eyewear. It's more of a shotgun company, I would look at it, as in the past. The quality of their lenses are exceptional, none like I've ever seen before. And I was able to work with the CEO and develop an actual eyewear kit that's specific to the action shooting world, which is a much smaller lens rather than the larger shotgun lens. But we're using the same lens technology that he once did into the new product that's really allows the targets to pop. And it's an actual light management system. So depending upon which lighting situation I find myself in, I have several different lenses that I can use. Mm-hmm.
How important do you reckon it is for a young shooter who wants to get involved in the sport, or for a beginner, to have the best gear right from the start? Or should you say, well, I'll start with something cheap to get into it?
No, I think it's extremely important. And I keep it almost like hopefully one day have it to show somebody and we can laugh about, but I have boxes and boxes of junk that I just used over the years that my father and I have accumulated and wasted so much money on. That's why we started the Max's Choice thing a while back, just so we can help others and show these are the products that we really approve. These are the the checkmark products that work. And because there's so many things out there that it's like, this looks cool because you see it on Facebook or you see it on social media, but is it really the right product? So I think it's absolutely important to make sure you have the right gear early on, or else you're going to find yourself struggling to continue to progress.
So everybody comes out to the range for a match, obviously, with their rig and their holsters and their pouches and the magazines and so on, range bags. And so what are your thoughts on range bags?
Yeah, I need to make sure that the range bag is a backpack for me. I prefer a backpack so that way I can carry it comfortably. If I have sometimes I have 500-600 rounds in my backpack if I'm shooting a full match. And
you always put your ammo in the bag. You never carry a separate ammo bag.
I always put it in the bag. Yeah. So if I'm traveling, maybe we have to park and walk a few hundred meters to the location where the actual ranges are. I want to have everything with me. You could bring a little buggy with you. Some folks like to carry the buggies now, or some sort of a carrier, but for me, I want to make sure it's comfortable. So I prefer the backpacks, and a backpack, obviously a range backpack that has the ability for me to store everything the way I need to store it and kind of put it in compartments nice and neat so I can get to everything where I need to get to it, rather than just a big open normal backpack that you might find at Walmart or whatnot. And I keep everything with me, everything I need. And people make fun of me quite a bit because they say I carry so much stuff to the range, but hey, I want to make sure that if I need it, I have it.
What do you think you carry that others don't? Any special pieces of equipment that'll be with you on the range?
I think the stuff that I carry that others don't is probably more nutrition than anything. I think many people carry spare parts. I would hope. I hope people carry spare parts, spare guns, maybe spare diodes for your optics and things like that. Batteries, the pro grips and the things that you would need on a daily basis. I think most of us are already carrying, but I think some things that we forget about is nutrition. You're on the range 10, 12 hours a day sometimes from sun up to sundown. And at one point or another, they're going to offer you a burger that they grilled out on the back. And that's probably not the best choice if you want to get your best performance. So I go ahead of time to a Walmart or some grocery store of some kind, and I get sliced meat, whether some sort of thin meat, maybe it's turkey or chicken. And so I just slice it all up and I make my own little meat roll-ups, fruits, protein bars, things of that nature. That way I carry it with me. And Powerade Zeros is another big choice of mine right now for a drink, because it's low in sugars and low in all the junk that you don't want in your body. And it just allows me to perform at a high level. So what am I carrying that others aren't? It's more geared toward
you and not just your equipment.
Correct.
And people worry about their gun. They don't worry about what's behind the gun enough, perhaps.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, a few hours into it, they always come to me for a bite of an apple or a piece of fruit or whatever it is, and I'm gonna tell them to go run to their own vehicle and go get it.
Well, yeah, well, that's part of the professional. It's, the professionalism that makes you so successful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the equipment is something that has to be perfect. I mean, in our sport, if you have even one malfunction on a big match, would you consider one malfunction in a big match acceptable?
Absolutely not. One malfunction in a practice session makes me very angry.
I find it very worrying.
Extremely.
You got to take that one really seriously.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think what a lot of people do is they're on the practice range and they have one problem and it's like, yeah, but that was probably a bad piece of brass. So maybe the primer was a little high, or I'll ignore that one for now and see what happens, And I think that's a big red flag that if you want that gun to be running in the match, you don't ignore that.
I think that's what separates guys like us from many others, is because of that. If I have one little hiccup, it drives me crazy. It's very worrisome. I'll take a picture of it and I analyze it to no end. I send it to my gunsmith and let him analyze it.
Spend 3 hours looking for the piece of brass.
Yeah, exactly. And what drives me crazy is what you just said. When you see somebody else on the range and they have a problem, they clear it really quickly and they go about their business and like nothing happened. And to me, if it's a friend of mine, I say, whoa, let's figure out what that is and what it's doing so it doesn't happen to you next week, because next week you can't clear it and just say start over. It doesn't happen that way.
A second that you lose on a malfunction is multiple points. Sometimes it's critical.
Definitely.
It can easily determine a match.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So how often do you actually find yourself cleaning guns, magazines, when you're practicing? You do that every practice before you start, when you leave the range, or is that like a weekly thing?
Yeah, so when I'm practicing, my practice regimen would be, as far as cleaning and whatnot, I'm probably not the cleanliest gun shooter. Yeah. I have practice mags, so I really don't care what happens to them. I'll literally run until the springs literally break. I mean, they're just crack in half and the feed lips are chipping off of the mags. And so I have practice mags that I use and I'll run all the time. And it also shows me the torture test of what they're capable of. And then when I can see the brass just start dribbling out, I know it's probably time to clean the gun, because it's getting really dirty and it's getting really, really dry as well. But that's my practice regimen. If it's a match regimen, that's going to be cleaned up, ready to go from top to bottom. Everything's coming out, looking over everything, checking everything, making sure no cracks, no wears, and oiling everything and lubing everything where it needs to be done.
Do you take apart the complete grip, the entire trigger assembly, or is that something you don't do very often?
I do. I used to take apart the entire grip each and every match.
Because I know a lot of shooters shooting 2011s and they don't even know how the grip comes apart. I mean, they think they take the barrel and the recoil spring out, and that's the end of the dismantling the gun.
Stuff inside that grip, and I'll work inside there. Typically before every match, it comes down, and I review everything. I like to add some slick to my hammer and sear and make sure the trigger's running the way it needs to run, so it feels smooth. And that's one of the things I prepare for. But I always make sure I go to the range the day before and shoot, even if it's just a magazine or two, to make sure it's good to go before I go out to the competition.
Yeah, it's definitely all about preparation. I mean, nothing happens by accident. If you put the work in advance and you make sure your equipment's 100%, that's the only way to assure you're going to have a trouble-free match. I mean, I know that from my own personal experience. Once you start shooting less, you also put less time into the gear maintenance, and then you're more likely to have a problem, and that's something that you really have to be careful with.
Yeah, good point. A good friend of ours, Blake Maguez, unbelievable shooter, unbelievable talent. Zero time for preparation because of his job and his duty and his obligations as a politician now, and it shows. He has lots of malfunctions, he has lots of issues, and when it doesn't, he connects, he can win, but if he could have a little more time to put into that, you can see really what he can become, and that's a world champion.
And it's like they say, the matches are won and lost before the match begins.
Absolutely, definitely. I'm a big believer in that.